Hi there, I want to show you something very quickly. This is a mosaic. A mosaic is a painting that is made from taking small bits of tile and painting part of the image on there, similar to the way Michelangelo painted the frescoes on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And you put them together to make an image, which is the painting. So there is actually brushes dipping in oil-based chemicals applied to a permanent surface to form an image that is recognizable. This is one of the most famous mosaics ever. It's generally referred to as the Alexander mosaic, and it depicts the Battle of Issus. That's I-S-S-U-S. You can see here that this is the Persian Empire, the last Persian Empire. I'm sorry, the Persian Emperor, the last Persian Emperor, Darius the second, and this is Alexander the Great, who he and his Greek forces have Darius, the Emperor Darius, in flight. The Persians lost the war. That was the last moment of the Persian Empire. There has never been a Persian Empire since, unless current day Iran gets nuclear weapons and uses them to successfully take over the world. Alexander destroyed the Persian Empire, and after Darius fled, his generals assassinated him, since it was all over anyway, and it was his incompetence that they blamed for. I just wanted to show somebody that. Why? No reason whatsoever. So anyway, getting to the presentation. This is section 5 of my presentation for several think tanks. This section is titled, "The American People Are Corrupt, Not the Politicians or the Corporations." There's a quote as my epigraph. My epigraph for this section is a quote from a movie that came out in the mid-2000s called Syriana, which is a really excellent study of what's going on in the world today in terms of oil and all of the corruption and espionage related to that natural resource oil. But anyway, quote, "Corruption charges? Corruption? Corruption is government intrusion into market efficiencies in the form of regulation." That's Milton Friedman. He got a goddamn Nobel Prize. We have laws against it, corruption, precisely so we can get away with it. Corruption is our protection. Corruption keeps us safe and warm. Corruption is why you and I are prancing around in here instead of fighting over scraps of meat out in the street. Corruption is why we win. Unquote, from Syriana. Now, I'm writing this section to express my disgust at the corruption that has taken over this entire society from top to bottom, and especially at the bottom, not especially at the top. The worst corruption is at the bottom, because the corruption at the bottom allows the corruption at the top and in between to happen, okay? And it's curious because because this quote from the movie Syriana makes a very good argument for corruption, right? So I'm including it here because that's the way you learn things. That is the way you think about things honestly and rationally. You take your position on an issue, and then you study every counter argument to make sure that your position is correct. And if you find convincing arguments, then you modify your position on the issue or your opinion. Now this represents the opposite of dichotomous thinking, which all of you are guilty of, I'm sure. Depending on how many of you are watching, there might be one or two who aren't. Dichotomous thinking. So this comes at this issue of American corruption from two opposite angles. And again, I include it, I begin the section with it for no good reason. American corruption. It's not the government or the corporations who are corrupt. It's the American people themselves. All of the institutions in this society which are corrupt. The news media, Hollywood, PR, marketing, and advertising, Congress, government bureaucrats at all levels, CEOs, making hundreds of millions of dollars doing what could easily be done by thousands of people walking the streets. The only reason these institutions are corrupt is because the American people prefer them that way. Journalists report lies. We don't want to lie to the people, but if we don't, they won't watch and somebody else will do it anyway. That is my subtextual translation of what they're all about. The American people love to hear about natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, droughts, forest fires out of control. Americans feel a sick hunger, nay starvation, for reports about the misery of other people. This is because other forms of expressing rage and hate for their cathartic value are not open to them. Most don't fight in our wars. We have no gladiatorial contests or agons where there is lots of blood and guts as in ancient Rome. No other forms of catharsis for the people. We don't joust like they did in the Middle Ages in Arthurian Britain. That's what rubbernecking is all about. Motorists slow down to look because they're hoping and praying to see some mangled human bodies. Just going with the flow is a form of corruption. If politicians were honest, Americans would never vote for them. For years, I fantasized about writing a satirical story about a man who runs for president, speaking with absolute honesty all the way, and wins. The point of the story is that America is so dishonest, they would never vote for a truly honest president because they would view his honesty as a major character flaw and weakness rather than a strength. Then something strange happened. Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president. He is as close to an honest candidate as we will probably ever see. If news sources reported the facts, Americans wouldn't be interested or pay attention. Journalism is dishonest by its very nature. It's corrupt by its very nature. Think about it. What's the first thing they teach you in journalism school? The definition of what is news. Dog bites man is not news. Man bites dog is news. So the news reporting and journalism are by their very nature sensationalist and hystericist. People want to be excited and enthralled, not educated or informed, especially in post-mortem America. The American people are corrupt, not the politicians or the corporations. Americans do not give a shit about anything unless they can either eat it, fuck it, or accelerate it. And I've been saying this for years. Because of this reality, they will think whatever they are told to think. They will feel whatever they are told to feel. They will buy whatever they are told to buy. And worst of all, they will value whatever they are told to value. Remember the pet rock phenomenon of the 1970s, and I talk about it a little bit further down. The American people are the most corrupt subset of humanity in the history of humanity. Self-deception is the voltage of moral corruption. Forgetting the meaning or loss of meaning is its amperage. That's what makes the electrons flow through the corrupt body politique and create the power in electronic terms and in political terms. The basis of moral corruption is self-deception. This occurs when a member of the cow and cattle people, that's you, in other words, the herd, which is everybody on the planet, most particularly today's Americans, flatter themselves with phony look-good attributions to conceal the real psychological and philosophical motivations for their actions, beliefs, and behaviors. Enormous bankruptcy of decaying values. Quote, people have no notion yet that from now onwards they exist on the mere pittance of inherited and decaying values, soon to be overtaken by an enormous bankruptcy. That's unquote. That's a quote by Hermann Hesse from his novel Damien, which has so much to say to us today. Okay? And according to this, we are in the period where we have been overtaken by bankruptcy. We're emotionally and psychologically, spiritually and philosophically bankrupt society. The corruption of the American people enables the corruption of the corporations, the politicians, and the rest of the elites, quote unquote. Slowly but systematically, we are witnessing all of the institutions that have kept this republic functioning for hundreds of years eroding away. There is a growing epidemic of serious dereliction of duty in all job areas at all levels in this society. People don't do their jobs anymore, for the most part. This isn't completely true, but you can see it getting worse and worse. They do expect the paymaster to do his job on Fridays, however. Dedication to duty as a moral virtue is systematically breaking down across the board in every subpopulation and every job function. Governors, state legislature people, attorneys, police chiefs, mayors, city and county council members, federal and local judges are all following the lead that Congress and federal bureaucrats have developed ages ago to say and do only what will help their career, their overall prestige in the company and within their constituencies, using this term in its broadest sense to include as constituencies family, friends, children and grandchildren, party guests, both political and wine and cheese partygoers, high school reunion attendees, and their egos. They have no interest whatsoever with the reality of the situation, the truth in any sense, what is right, what is just, what is legal, and certainly not what is moral. Examples: the female judge on the West Coast who helped the illegal immigrant flee custody out the back door of the court building to escape INS agents. Disgusting doctors pushing sex change surgery operations on children. Plastic surgeons pushing tit implants. They have advertisements. There are now competing advertisements from 3 or 4 different clinics or doctors in New York City advertising in the subway for tit transplants for women. And probably for homos who got whatever freaking surgery they call it. Therapists who have no clue as to what they're doing, but rely on the DSM to fool people with its techno psychobabble. Many other examples. I believe that what people call the psychobabble in psychology is true and of importance. But most people don't because they don't understand it. So it can be used as a propaganda tool. He who dies with the most toys wins, quote unquote, and he's crying all the way to the bank, quote unquote. Common sayings in postmortem America. The nature and purpose of American corruption here revealed and laid out in 2 nutshells. You cannot find better evidence of the corrupt society than the above 2 quotes. People who feel this way, people who laugh when people say these things, joking in a crowd, are revealing that they're corrupt. They're cynical and corrupt. Even if they don't believe it, even laughing at it shows that part of them is a problem. Part of their personalities and psyches are corrupted by these concepts. When policemen break the law, then there isn't any law, just a fight for survival, quote unquote. That's from the movie Billy Jack. Great quote. The U.S. is a country that has completely betrayed its own professed and foundational ideals. It has earned the right to be harmed or destroyed. I certainly don't want it to be harmed or destroyed, at least not right now. But the truth hurts, doesn't it? Americans have sold out their birthright for nose hair trimmers, iPads, SUVs, and wine cellars, and much more. Americans are moral cripples. Unprecedented pleasures and comforts have been lavished on the American people today, but it hasn't made them better, it's made them worse. Americans are the single most privileged citizenry in history, yet it has not made them better people, it has made them worse people. Here we go. They've never known real hunger, where you're forced to eat things you would normally throw away during normal times, when you have no idea how long it will be until real food will be accessible again. Never been in situations where they are severely injured like a broken leg, but have no money to pay a doctor, no hospital emergency room available, and the leg heals by itself without a cast, so you wind up crippled for the rest of your life. Americans have never been without what we consider to be essentials, such as toilets, sewer systems, or toilet paper to wipe their asses with. So they have to become squat shitters like the majority of humans on the planet, squatting in an open field out somewhere, wiping their asses with grass or their hands. Most of all, postmortem Americans have never been in a situation where they are suffering a war on their own soil, where bullets and bombs are flying all around them, where bombs are exploding on or near their homes, where their neighbors are being shot in the street. They have never been under foreign occupation, where foreign armies are able to do whatever they want with you, rape your 11-year-old right in front of you, shoot up your furniture, take your food, burn your personal effects. Considering the horrors Americans have been protected by and the dishonesty, lawlessness, stupidity, hubris they exhibit, it's understandable that we have these mass shootings and bombings, which show that Americans in general want to kill themselves in general. With all their privileges and advantages in life, post-mortem Americans have less reasoning ability than serfs in the Middle Ages. People in this country today are as stupid, or even more stupid, than people in the Middle Age who burned people at the stake for being witches, or condemned people as witches because they floated in a pond of water rather than sinking in it. And what's worse, they have no knowledge about the substance of the great country that gave them all these wonders and really couldn't give a shit less. And they really couldn't give a shit less. See my discussion of Herbert McCloskey's book, Dimensions of Tolerance, What Americans Know About Civil Liberties, discussed below. Herbert McCloskey, Dimensions of Tolerance. It came up that quickly because I haven't put these slides in the final order yet. Herbert McCloskey, Dimensions of Tolerance, What Americans Believe About Civil Liberties. I worked for Professor McCloskey as a research assistant while an undergraduate in the mid-'80s. Since then, I have bore witness to the problems he describes in the above book get worse and worse and worse. Most Americans do not deserve to be Americans. What he did in this book is he took 10 years and went around the country surveying people. He's one of the founders of survey research and polling in political science and sociology. So he's a very important thinker on these issues. And he took some graduate assistants and went around the country for 10 years. And what he found is that the average American knows less about what America is about, what the Constitution is about, our founding, our history, our law. They know less about what America is about than pygmies in Africa or tribal people in the Amazon. That is scary. The average American is a total conformist. They will think whatever they are told to think. They will feel whatever they are told to feel. They will believe whatever they are told to believe. And they will do most of what they are told to do. It is certainly possible for the right kind of leader, manipulator, demagogue to come along and get them to do whatever is desired, regardless of whether or not the individual American in question originally wanted them to do. In the mid-'70s, a nobody named Gary Dahl made millions of dollars by inventing the product pictured below. Americans will buy whatever they're told to buy. And you can't see the pic that I have here, but it's a picture of the pet rock. In the mid-'70s, this guy came along and took a smooth little rock that he found on the beach somewhere, whatever, put it in a little box and called it a pet rock and told people that you bring it home and you can pet it. It's a pet. Sold millions and millions and millions and millions. Post-structuralist bullshit. Welcome to the anarchist hospital. Anarchy in the operating room. Deconstruction on the hospital operating table. If words have no meaning, you die on the operating table. Anarchists should try an experiment. Put together a hospital run on anarchist principles, which in a nutshell are where nobody tells anybody else what to do. Then go out and break your leg. Then go to your anarchist hospital to get your leg fixed. Next, go to the wheelchair store to buy a wheelchair as your permanent home, because you will not be fixed and your life will be destroyed. You will be crippled until your death. What a laugh. The concept of political morality. The political morality, or the political values of the United States, are those bequeathed to us by the framers and founding fathers and outlined in our main foundational documents, including the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, the Gettysburg Address, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, The Rights of Man by Thomas Paine, early federal court decisions, the correspondence between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, and others. Some of these political values include separation of powers, due process of law, the right to be left alone, privacy, stare decisis, posse comitatus, and many others. Political values constitute a system of values similar to moral values, aesthetic values, and so forth, but different. By that standard of political morality, antithetical moralities, or attempts to alter or abolish that morality, can be defined as evil, or more specifically, politically evil. Democrats, liberals, the left, college professors, university administrators, K-12 teachers, ethnic minorities, Muslims, feminists, homosexuals, are engaged in a program of eliminating or eradicating our nation's political values. They are pushing a new political morality that is evil, according to this construction of political morality and political evil. They have a long-term strategy to take full, complete, and total and permanent control of this society. Yes, that means they're trying to establish a de facto dictatorship. Part of their strategy is to flood the electorate with illegal immigrants who will vote as a bloc according to their left-wing wishes, as a form of gratitude for letting them in the country at all, and also because they're giving them billions of dollars worth of free stuff in the form of governmental entitlements. Another part of this strategy is to fight voter ID laws with all their might, so that their illegal voting bloc will put them in power and keep them in power. This strategy is happening across Europe also. French writer Renaud Camus has dubbed this strategy the Great Replacement, importing millions of desperate third worlders from fragile or failed states who will be loyal to their handlers. The ultimate goal, of course, is money and power. This is ultimately the result of loss of God nihilism and other diseases described above. After that, they pursue a political ideology that is delusional and therefore mentally ill, to satisfy their own personal and group personal ego needs. America's decline to death, terms, post-mortem societies. Empires in the last stages of decline to death, according to cyclical historians such as Spengler, Toynbee, and Mommsen, not to mention the watered-down, quasi-plagiarized versions of William O'Neill and Neil Howe. America is the post-World War II period. America is in the post-World War II period, is a post-mortem society. Slimy self-service everywhere you look in this nation. This is a disgusting society we have created and inhabit now, a nation of slimy opportunists. Deborah Gibson, one of the accusers who helped take down Judge Roy Moore during his Alabama senatorial bid, is now running for office. David Hogg, a kid who survived, quote unquote, the Parkland High School shooting in Broward County a few months back, is touring the nation attacking the NRA. Certainly better than going to geometry class. He no longer needs to go to any class at all. He no longer needs a high school diploma now. He's got a future in politics. Andrew Pollock, father of daughter who died, Meadow, starting a foundation and charity to stop school shooting. Better and far more lucrative than whatever job he was holding before. I don't include him because subsequently I found out more about him, and I found out that he's actually fighting against the people who are propagandizing about guns in the wake of this shooting and all these other shootings. He's actually pro-Second Amendment. So I give him a little slack. He no longer needs to go to work. His work will be running his foundation. The American people are a nightmare. The corruption of the American people, from Clinton and Clinton, Obama, Comey, McCabe, Schumer, Warren, Pelosi, Waters, Ryan, the Kennedys, McConnell, Wall Street and their corporateer cronies, Bezos, Pechai, Zuckerberg, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, the Bilderbergers, and on and on. This society has come to the point where it is a machine that can only produce shit. A virtual shit machine. By shit, I mean people. In terms of what this society produces in terms of American people are shit. Our religion is kitsch shit. Our art, our culture is a much worse variety of manure. Whatever happened to the natural aristocracy of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams? Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Chuck Schumer, Maxine Waters, Elizabeth Warren, Ronald Reagan, the Kennedys, our current crop of billionaires are not what Jefferson and Adams had in mind when they spoke about a natural aristocracy. If they saw the country today and saw how creatures like this have moved into positions of power where they have any influence on policy making whatsoever, they would try to destroy this country. They would join Al-Qaeda or IS or side with Russia and China and their enslaved proxies like Syria, Iran, DPRK, and etc. Of course, I'm being extreme here, but you get the point. This is not a country built for equality. This is a country designed specifically to produce, in the words of Thomas Jefferson, a meritocracy or natural aristocracy. America's great failure in this regard is one of the greatest tragedies in world history, and I mean it. Artificial aristocracy versus natural aristocracy. Artificial aristocracy is built from wealth and birth. This is a nation designed to prevent the appearance of or hinder the development of artificial aristocracies. Yet they function in full force everywhere. In this respect, America is a total and complete failure. None of these people can joust. So it doesn't matter how intelligent or clever or cunning they are. It Doesn't matter how connected or networked they are. It doesn't matter how slimy and dishonest they are. In medieval or Arthurian Britain, they would never be allowed to ascend to a leadership position or even get close. Jousting was a test of physical courage, physical and mental endurance, physical strength, and the permanent victory over physical pain. In other words, these guys got hurt and maimed, and they just took it like tough men. The above attributes constituted their political and moral value systems. If you couldn't joust, you couldn't rule. This is why what I'm saying is that, it makes me think of Mr. Bernstein's quote in Citizen Kane, where the guy justifies this other guy who was an asshole by saying he made a lot of money. And Mr. Bernstein, who also made a lot of money, counters and says, son, there's no trick to making a lot of money if all you want to do is make a lot of money. And my term for people who make a lot of money because all they want to do to make a lot of money is Snopes, which comes from William Faulkner's series of novels about Yoknapatawpha County in Mississippi. And the people who run everything are a family called the Snopeses. Okay, he invented all of this, but still, big, important, it's like, that's like mythology to provide wisdom on our society, the way Greek myths were designed to produce wisdom in ancient Greek society. Okay? And what we have is all of these people making it rich, bankers and corporate slime and all these kind of people. They're making it rich in this society because this society is designed to favor those kind of people without putting them through the tests of being complete men, meaning without having to exhibit physical endurance or strength or courage or victory or self-control in the Roman virtue sense of the mind's ability to control the body in terms of not just your ability to control your pain, meaning take your pain and not give into it, but your ability to control your pleasure too, which means when you decide that you don't want to give in to this desire for pleasure that you have, you don't want to fuck this chick over here, she's hot, but she's a witch. So you don't. You have power over your body. Your mind has power. The above attributes, if you couldn't joust, you couldn't rule. So these people are, they're rich and powerful, and they have a lot of control over where the society is going. But they wouldn't be able to make it in most of the other societies that have evolved in human history. When I sit back and take some serious time to meditate on what this country is turning into, what it has turned into, I literally shed tears. I have actually cried wet tears, literally. It has become one big free-for-all feed fest. Comfort corrupts. Comfort will be a corrupting influence on any society and will eventually assist in the destruction of a powerful empire. Corruption from comfort. That is one of the key factors involved in our overall level of corruption today. The secret to our society's decay. Comfort corrupts. Comfort corrupts. Comfort makes stupid. Just look at Americans. It's like a Monty Python skit about the upper-class twits. Remember, if you ever watched Monty Python in the 70s, they had these upper-class, people in British society, the people who, like, this guy is the Viscount of this shire, and this guy is the Baron of this shire. And they inherited that position in society from literally hundreds of generations, which is fine. But what has happened is that their privileged position has eroded their personality structures, period. They have nothing to say, nothing, they don't do anything. They no longer need to think, so they don't. Generations later, you get a completely herdable citizenry. That's what's happening here. Even though the average citizen in this country is not an upper-class twit. They're a very low-class twit. Generations later, you get a completely herdable citizenry. ESPN polls play-by-play announcer of NFL game last year because his name is Robert Lee. This was at the time of all of this psychotic lying bullshit about what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, back whenever it was. Even though he is Asian, not Southern, unless he's from South Asia. People in this society get softer and weaker by the day. less and less able to tolerate pain, suffering, deprivation of any kind, creeping narcissism, society on the verge of disaster, characteristics of dying societies, accelerating hypersensitivity to pain. They don't call themselves the weak, they call themselves the good, quote unquote. An excessive sensitivity to sensation, which manifests itself as a refined incapacity for pain, and secondly, an extraordinary spiritual refinement. That's in a Talosian sense, meaning they're refining their spirit, but their body, their physicality is totally decaying away because they don't want to have a powerful, healthy physical body, because then that might put them in danger of having to fight or defend themselves or whatever. The instinctive hatred of reality, the consequence of an extreme susceptibility to pain and suffering so great that merely to be touched becomes unendurable for every sensation, is too profound to bear. These are quotes. The instinctive, quote, the instinctive exclusion of all aversion, all hostility, all limitations and distances and feelings. The consequence of an extreme susceptibility to pain and suffering so great that it senses all resistance, all compulsion to resistance as an unbearable anguish. That's what these people in college, that's what these safe spaces and snowflakes and all this kind of stuff is about, okay? And regards blessedness, pleasure, as only possible when it is no longer necessary to resist anybody or anything, however evil and dangerous, a sublime super-evolution of hedonism. Unquote. Many Americans are aware of the weaklings described above and refer to them as snowflakes, social justice warriors, etc. I refer to them as the Eloi, or the herd. In our society, the herd is evolving into Eloi, which is the final stage of herd psychology, herd physicality, and herd existence. I refer to them as Eloi or the herd and hope that bad things are in store for them, which they are. Postmortem America is made up of millions of miniature Marie Antoinettes, but without the ability to discriminate wives. America has become a country where victimhood entitlements are commodified. That's another aspect of our decline. We have all variety. First there was Jewish victimhood. This led to black victimhood, feminine victimhood, homosexual victimhood, Palestinian victimhood, Muslim victimhood, Serbo-Croat victimhood, and on. When everybody is a victim, who then are the perpetrators? Perhaps the victims themselves? In America, it seems each victim is somebody else's persecutor. Victimhood today is power. You can get away with a lot more head games, etc., if you can, and political games, if you can convince people at large that you are a victim. Jews, blacks, women, homos, everybody. There's a victimhood group for every type of person you can come up with today. Postmortem America as a nation of Babbitts and a nation of Snopeses, a Snopes nation, I just talked about that a few minutes ago, who live life as narrow-minded materialists. They're not narrow-minded materialists. Materialism doesn't exist anymore when there's no alternative, when there's no spiritualist. So when a nation becomes 100% materialist, you can't call them that anymore. It's just the norm for that society, and that's a dying norm. Airline peanuts as an ominous sign of our decline. What are they about at root? They're about what I've discovered in this society, another symptom that I have seen occurring all around me, what I call linguistic nominality. Linguistic nominality occurs in societies that are a few decades away from being conquered by the Chinese, the Russians, the North Koreans, the Persians, Syrians, Cubans, and Venezuelans. In other words, we're going to die, and they're going to be and the vultures are going to be eating away at our dead flesh. Linguistic nominality means that the meaning of important words in a dead culture are reduced to the mere sound of the words themselves without their reference, in terms of Gottlob Frege, completely lost, and whatever meaning or connotations once associated with them have disappeared or barely exist anymore. They are being devolved out of, their meaning is being devolved from the words. They have reverted to false X's, fake placeholders. PMAs today have lost the meaning of words because they have lost all meaning whatsoever. Weasel words occur in every political, moral, or religious conversation in PMA every hour of every day. Definition of corruption, losing the meaning. We've all lost all meaning. But for most Americans, they've lost a meaning that they never had in the first place. The business of America is business. This is true on the subconscious level, especially. In business, It is an admirable strength to be able to outslime your opponent or your customer, especially. Business is essentially salesmanship. How to convince your potential customer to purchase a product or service they do not necessarily want or need. In other words, dishonesty and disingenuousness are qualities and talents that create superior salesmen and businessmen in general. Forgive me for moving around, but this chair is killing my ass. But anyway, journalism is dishonest by its very nature. The business world is even worse. What's the first thing you learn I said that up above. What's the first thing you learn in journalism school? The show that is corrupt by its nature. Throw in advertising with your business and you have a mix which will inevitably produce a dishonest population not capable of self-reflection or self-understanding, therefore not capable of wisdom. The most important thing. Wisdom is the guide that tells us how we should live our lives. And ultimately, you arrive at total disingenuousness and totally fake personalities throughout the culture. The inauthentic rules in the hearts of men in this society, but especially women. I don't say women because it always ruled in their psyches, but that's a different issue. Also, comfort produces shallow nihilists. This philosophy of life has produced great wealth. It's produced great wealth for large numbers of Americans. It has also produced great innovations in products such as nose hair trimmers, electric socks, pet rocks, the Ginsu knife, and many other wonderful gizmos that make life in America just that much more fun and fattening too. But it has produced other byproducts. It has produced a psychology in the American people as a whole. There are several of our military personnel in military prison right now. Why? Because when we found Saddam Hussein in his hole, with millions of dollars in American currency with him, American Marines, U.S. Marines for Christ's sake, tried to pocket the money and disappear into the desert. They tried to grab as much of the currency as they could, shove it in bags, and then go AWOL. They were caught, tried, convicted, and imprisoned. You don't hear about this anymore for good reason. In fact, you didn't hear about it at all back when it happened. You had to really dig into the news to find it, to find any mention or discussion of it. Advertising these events would be very harmful to the psyche of the herd. Adult daycare. Married people dump off their aging parents into what are now being called adult daycare centers. They could take care of them if they really wanted to, but certainly without interference with their immediate family's lifestyle, quote unquote. Once these people dump their parents permanently into these places, they have much of a daily or weekly routine involves casual trivialities or fun or relaxation exercises. Of course, they say we can't take care of it, it takes too much work and all this kind of stuff. But once they dump the parent into it's not actually adult care, you know what I mean, it's homes for people who are waiting to die. Once they dump them off, they spend a lot more weekends at water parks with the whole family. You know, they couldn't take this person who's confined to a wheelchair to the water parks with them. It's more difficult. Family vacations, go see the Grand Canyon. You know, your aging grandmother in a wheelchair cannot hike down into part of the way into the canyon with you. She can't wheel around on that glass floor thing they have in the Grand Canyon that allows you to look down into it. My war against obviousness. He symbolizes everything that disgusts me. What? Obviousness, unoriginal, macho energy, ladies' man, quote unquote. That's from Henry Chinaski from the movie version of Barfly. Obviousness indicates shallowness. Obvious indicates obliviousness, which is another symptom I'm seeing in this society that scares me. The two combined are the symptom of a lack of a wisdom organ in the body politic. Obliviousness aids obviousness. Both are blocks to self-knowledge. What to do with a morally corrupt populace? It is moral to destroy the morally corrupt. And most societies in ancient history, throughout human history, I mean, basically that's what they did. Basically, they imprisoned people, they killed people, they punished people because they were not following along with the morality of the society, not just the laws. Because in healthier times, societies had a state religion, okay? The Romans had a state religion. The Greeks had dozens of city-states. acted in their own interest economically and military laws kind of stuff, but they all had the same moral code. All right. So when people went against the morality, and they didn't use the term moral corruption, I think that applies more to today. They were punished for their moral failure. When I give this opinion, be sure to understand that I do not play games with words. When I say destroy, I definitely mean exterminate, as in exterminate with extreme prejudice. This is the moral philosophy that will be running this planet in the near future. The basis of moral corruption is self-deception. This occurs when a member of the cow and cattle people, in other words, the herd, which is everybody on the planet, most particularly Americans, flatter themselves with phony, look-good self-attributions to conceal the real psychological and philosophical motivations of their actions, beliefs, and behaviors. It's bizarre and ridiculously funny that mainstream opinion in this country, propagandized by the mainstream propaganda news media, have no problem with men marrying other men so that they may put their penises up their partner's anuses and create more epidemics of deadly diseases like HIV/AIDS. Yet they go apeshit over the idea of a 30 or 40 or whatever year old man having a love affair with a willing 20-year-old woman. More of the hypocrisy of a fully, totally morally corrupt society. Get real. It's not the government. It's you, American. We have become Greece and Rome in reverse. We call the highest body of lawmakers in our land the Senate, after the ancient Romans. Many of the buildings that house most of our precious possessions, usually money, were designed with fluted Greek columns to bear homage to the founders of our civilization. We teach their literature, their philosophy, their science, and mathematics. We honor them because they invented or got started every cultural achievement that we value. But the reality is that we have stood their legacy on its head. The vast majority of Americans are simply rotten to the core, just like most of humanity. The difference is Americans don't have any excuses. Our current problem with Iran are our own fault. Perfect example of corruption. We directly caused all our own problems in Iran. After World War II, there was a functional and stable democracy developing in Iran under Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. But Mossadegh wanted to do what was right for his country. So he attempted to nationalize the oil production industry, which at the time was British owned. So our CIA helped the Pahlavis, that's the Shah, who was overthrow him in a 1953 coup. Within the few decades, the state of instability we created in the country resulted in the rise to power of Ayatollah Khomeini and his cronies, who formed an Islamic Republic in Iran. So as usual in international affairs, we are responsible for our own problems in Iran. Now, I don't disagree with that. I believe that as an empire, we need to guarantee our interest. So if they felt that if CIA and whomever was giving them orders felt that this was necessary for our country, then that's fine. Just my problem is be fucking honest about it, okay? Don't lie about it. Don't sweep it under the rug. Get real, okay? Fucking America needs to fucking get real. We reached the point where cynicism is so ingrained and endemic that it's become instinctive. We've become a generation of instinctive cynics, and it's more than just one generation. People are walking around with cynicism in their blood. They've completely given up on finding any meaning in their lives, any true spiritual meaning. Another effect of the nihilist empire. America is the nihilist empire. Rampant cynicism. They're not even aware that they feel it, that it exists, or that there could be an alternative. They've become so cynical to the point that they do not even recognize not cynicism. They don't, the alternative. The reason that people in New York City won't look at you, especially women in New York City, is that they cannot risk witnessing a rejecting look, because they can't risk the feelings of rejection that a rejecting look would arouse in them. Politics in this country has become personal, completely personal. When I say personal, what I mean is that it has become psychologically oriented, because political, moral, and religious positions and views no longer serve a political, moral, or religious function. Views or opinions on political issues function as ego defense mechanisms for hiding mental conflicts from consciousness. Earlier or later, somewhere in the presentation at large, I talk about one of the most important books ever written in the United States, which is Opinions and Personality by Smith, Bruner, and White, which did a study to show the the internal personal motivations that people that engineer and motivate people's opinions on everything. Okay, you might say at a party that you hate Mr. X over there, but deep down inside, he insulted you, and you can't get over the insult. So now you're telling people lies about him, that he cheats on his wife, blah blah blah, whatever. That's ego defense mechanisms, and that's what is in control of the political psyche of America today. The liberal corruption game. Why Democrats are biased in favor of immigration, legal or otherwise. The practical reasons are as important as the ideological, moral reasons. Every illegal immigrant is a vote for at least one Democratic candidate, maybe even 2 or 3 candidates. Because the Democrats invite them in and give them all kinds of benefits and free stuff, like housing, food, education, welfare, cell phones, healthcare, and on and on. Execution order allowing women in combat, the executive order allowing women in combat had a single overriding purpose: to buttress the self-esteem of American women, which helps end feminism in general, and feminism's allies, which of course are a lot of the time men, which helps female politicians in favor as well as the little woman who wants to join the military. Of course, the little woman who joins the military feels indebted to Obama and other idiots in favor of such legislative nonsense, and push their friends and relatives to support them forever after. I would venture that many of these military women threaten to deny their husbands or boyfriends sex, but is there any man out there who would want to have sex with any women seeking to go into combat in the first place? To allow them to make the psychotic feminist argument that a woman can do anything a man can do, and that they do not really need men to protect them. Liberal narcissistic disorder. This is from an article by Gerald Shanewolf. Quote, liberal narcissistic disorder, noun, a special group of narcissistic people in which members feel entitled because of their membership in a cause and feel empowered to demonize all who disagree with their gospel. The disorder is characterized by a bubble of conceit, which covers up a lack of substance. Those with this disorder feel qualified to look down on and punish all unbelievers, including independents, moderate liberals, conservatives, Republicans, and others not in step with their vision of liberalism. They use rationalization to justify. Rationalization is one of the primary ego defenses that Freud and people who came after them defined. They use rationalization to justify punishment of opponents, claiming they are victims and therefore have the right to take action against detractors. Punishments include calling opponents names such as sexist, racist, homophobe, misogynist, forcing opponents to apologize if they say something politically incorrect, getting opponents fired from their jobs, rushing to judgment to prove others wrong and they are right, twisting the facts and digging up sometimes half-truths to smear an opponent. Other symptoms of this disorder is a complete inability to look at oneself objectively, a rage reaction if anybody doubts them, and a need, like a queen in the story Snow White, to always be right. Psychoanalytically speaking, they deny their own hate and project it onto their opponents. Together, those with this disorder are an out-of-control herd that runs over anybody in its way and will not listen to anyone who tries to stop them. Note, this kind of liberal has nothing to do with real liberals, such as Abraham Lincoln, Robert F. Kennedy, Mother Teresa, quote unquote. Gerald Shanewolf. GIs held in bid to steal $1 million of Saddam's cash. War aftermath plot to take booty, mirrors Clooney film The Three Kings. That is the title of an article that I have in my archive talking about the Marines who tried to steal the money and got caught and are now in prison. The Cappuccino Wars. No blood for oil, you say? Food travels on average of more than 1,500 miles from farm to plate. Therefore, the harsh reality is that oil is more important than blood. But it's no harsh reality for Americans. People in this country who think or say they're against the war are just, I wrote this back in 91 or whenever it was. I think it was Bush #2's wars in Iraq, actually, in the early 2000s. People in this country who think or say they're against the war are just pretending. It's a big pose, that's all. If they knew what life in this country would be like if we did not have Persian Gulf oil, they'd probably be scared into volunteering for the wars themselves. Well, that might be pushing it, because they're usually chicken shit cowards in general. A line of dialogue from the movie version of 3 Days of the Condor is apropos here. This is an important movie that came out in the mid-'70s with Robert Redford playing a CIA whistleblower. Higgins, it's simple, economics. Turner. Higgins, it's simple economics, Turner. Robert Redford played the character Turner. And Higgins played a director in the CIA who's trying to figure out, he's not trying to kill Turner. He's trying to figure out what happened, because Turner had worked in a the front for the CIA was a literary society in Midtown Manhattan, and they had a whatchamacallit, a duplex or whatever it is. And what they really did was analyze books and articles around the world looking for plots and schemes. And somebody in the CIA, a rogue subgroup of the CIA, found out about it and had all of them killed, because they were actually the plot that they discovered was close to what they were actually doing, this renegade group of CIA guys. So Higgins, it's simple economics, Turner. There's no argument. Oil now, or maybe 10 or 15 years, it'll be food or plutonium. Maybe sooner than that. What do you think the people will want us to do then? Turner, ask them. Higgins, now? Shakes his head. Ask them when they're running out, when it's cold at home and the engines stop and the people who aren't used to hunger go hungry. They won't want us to ask. They'll just want us to get it for them. Quote unquote. Now, the problem with this is that our hero, Turner, Robert Redford, is actually in the wrong. Higgins is actually right. And the idea of the movie is to present that Turner is right so people will sympathize with peace and love instead of the reality of realpolitik, which is the reality of having to do whatever secures our national existence and perpetuation. People who strike the anti-war pose are like the people of Higgins' tentative future, who can pretend because they aren't hungry yet. The invasion of Iraq was not about Saddam, not about WMDs, not even about oil directly. The war was fought to keep comfortable Americans stuffing junk food down their throats and sipping cappuccinos, while they take breaks from their taxing and trying shopping spree schedules. In other words, the wars are fought to maintain the American way of life. Translation, the American standard of living. Ultimately, we fought the war over cappuccinos. In a country where every man is what he has, he who has very little isn't anybody very much. That is from the 60s movie A New Leaf by Elaine May, which is an important satire of this society back in the 60s. People sense the truth of Elaine May's remark, even if they've never heard it. Because you're honest. Okay, this is a quote. This is another quote from a book, from a play. Quote, because you're honest, and what is more to the point, you're known to be honest. There are those like Norfolk who follow me because I wear the crown. There are those like Master Cromwell who follow because they are jackals with sharp teeth. This is Henry VIII talking to, what's his name? I forgot his name. There are those like Norfolk who, the Master Cromwell who follow because they're jackals with sharp teeth and I am their tiger. There's a mass that follows me because it follows anything that moves. And then there's you. It's from Robert Bolt's, the movie version of his play, A Man for All Season. And it's Henry VIII trying to convince, God damn it, an important, I'm going to have to edit that out.